I saw my baby trying hard as babe could try. What could I do? My baby's fun had gone and left my baby blue. Nobody knew.
So once again, the Xbox influencers and fanboys are completely showing how dishonest they are.
Yep, the day's finally here. I'm responding to Porter Rock. Held out as long as I could, but here we are.
Another topic of the Activision Blizzard deal, something came up and is truly exposing themselves. But before I get into that, let me just preface everything with this, all right?
Yeah, I'm gonna skip ahead to the real meat of his video. First couple minutes are him just saying he totally understands why people have preferred gaming platforms, how platforms have to entice you to their side, yada yada. I'm just skipping ahead to the part where he really starts getting into his real thesis.
As far as the Activision Blizzard, I will tell you, and I said this 100 times, I have nothing against, personally, to that acquisition. If it happens, it happens. If it don't, it don't. I said from the very beginning that if Microsoft acquires Activision, it honestly does not make sense to continue to make Call of Duty, at least the annual one, available on PlayStation.
Really? There's no reason to release one of the biggest franchises in the world on PlayStation when there's already a huge installed user base? It's one thing to make a game like Elder Scrolls or Starfield exclusive to Xbox. You know, Bethesda RPGs usually sell like 10 to 20 million copies one time, whereas Call of Duty sells that plus more every single year. Even the shitty CODs sell well over 10 to 15 million copies. So if you're Microsoft in this situation, the numbers just aren't comparable. When you're only selling 10 to 20 million copies every 2 to 3 years, it's a lot easier to try and convince your PlayStation community to hop onto another platform. But if you're the top selling multiplat every single year, regardless of quality, and you have one of the biggest free-to-play games in the world, in what fucking universe would it be a good idea to cut out like a third of your potential base? The potential missed sales there are astronomical, and Microsoft would be incredibly foolish to actually pull Call of Duty off of PlayStation. Like, that wouldn't just be anti-consumer, it would be completely anti-logic.
They would be better off from a company's perspective to make it exclusive to Xbox and PC. They want on Game Pass, obviously, and they're going to draw in the crowd because people will leave. I said that. Many people arguing against me in the beginning, especially from PlayStation. Now they're starting realizing that is a very true possible outcome.
I mean, yeah, it's possible Microsoft makes COD exclusive to Xbox and PC, but it just wouldn't be a good business idea. And here, I'll put my money where my mouth is. As of August of this year, Warzone has over 98 million users. And according to ActivePlayers.io, about 42% of that player base is on the PlayStation. Asking that many people to change platforms is going to do serious damage to the game's popularity, especially if Sony, comes up with a PlayStation exclusive competitor to Call of Duty. It's just not gonna happen. I really don't know what people are so afraid of here.
Nice execution.
You're doing terrific.
It is what it is. In fact, I will say this. There is one acquisition that Microsoft did that actually did personally affect me. That was the acquisition of Bethesda.
Which is a very interesting one to keep an eye on going forward. I honestly have my doubts that Microsoft is going to stick to console exclusivity with ES6, but, I guess we'll wait and see.
I'm one of the PlayStation gamers that did not bash. That's now all of a sudden bashing Elder Scrolls or Fallout. I still love those games. I will play those games day one. Guess what? It's going to be on a different platform. It will no longer be on the PlayStation platform. That's perfectly fine. Eventually, I'm going to get a PC anyway. That's going to be my secondary platform. I will have no problem playing Elder Scrolls and playing Fallout on PC. And I'm going to check out Starfield on PC.
Okay, so if COD did go to PC and Xbox exclusively, you wouldn't even really be affected, is what I'm getting from this. I mean, I guess good on you for sticking up for the underdog, but just weird flex. Stick with this one. It hasn't gotten to the really dumb stuff yet, but we're getting there. It's like a show that only gets good in the 4th episode. Like, we're almost there. In fact, I'm just going to skip ahead again so I can stop wasting your guys' time.
But the point of this video is there's a lot of fraudulent stances within the Xbox community, primarily from the fanboys and influencers. They are pretending to be something they are not. They are out there advocating for the gamers, which is a lie. You are not advocating for the gamers. You are advocating for Xbox gamers and for your own self-interest as an Xbox gamer and for the interests of Microsoft, which is the company you prefer. That's it.
I mean, yeah, generally speaking, influencers who blindly follow a corporation's lead and don't question anything are pretty fucking lame. But as we're about to see, what you qualify as an influencer just shilling for Microsoft is actually something else entirely. And it kind of reflects back on you more than anyone else.
Do not pretend you're worrying about gaming in general or gamers in general. Why am I saying this? Well, recently, Twitter user by the name of Ricardo Cardoso.
Yes, he is a Twitter user and nothing else.
I'm looking at his profile now on Twitter. Is R Cardoso EU. His profile says he's a deputy head of unit interinstitutional and outreach views.
Yes, he is someone of importance in this debate because the people making the decisions are likely running in the same circles that he is.
Wait, views are mine. I guess he works some company, right?
Yeah, some company. Just some company.
He made a comment, but he did ensure that his comment that he made, and I'm going to read it to you, says, to clarify, I am not involved in the assessment of the merger and don't even work in that department dealing with mergers.
Yes, the tweet we're going to be talking about was followed up with this, but it really didn't matter, hence why that got ratioed as well. It doesn't matter that he's not actually involved with whether or not something passes. What does matter is that he's in a very high position of power and is quite close to the people that do make this decision of whether or not something passes. So the fact that he's so wrong about this, it really just doesn't say great things about those who are actually going to make a difference here. And yes, this might be confusing right now, but all of it will be clear in like a minute.
So, why did he say that? Well, he made a tweet that got 118 retweets, 623 quote tweets. So you know when you quote tweet that much, boy, and 724 likes.
And here's where it's at as of the recording of my video. Probably a bit worse by now. And just so everyone's on the same page, I'll leave it on screen for a few seconds so you can pause and read it. And, you know, he's going to give us the cliff notes in a second, so just do whatever you want now, I guess.
And he said, the commission is working to ensure that you will still be able to play Call of Duty on other consoles. And he puts in parentheses, including my PlayStation.
And no matter how you want to look at this, that's a really concerning thing to be said by someone who's supposed to be impartial.
Also on our to-do list, update stock pictures. These gamers have wired controllers, whereas Xbox and PlayStation have wireless ones about 2006. Now, what he's talking about is he retweeted a tweet from the EU competition, and it says hashtag Merger Control Commission opens in-depth investigation into the proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft.
Yeah, it's more Microsoft Activision drama that's inevitably going to conclude the same way that we all thought it was going to conclude with the first day we heard the news. Microsoft is going to buy Activision. Some games are going to become Xbox console exclusive, and Call of Duty will stay multi-platform just without the PlayStation perks. That's it. Oh, and I guess a bunch of Activision games will get Game Pass support, but I don't see how that could be even remotely viewed as a bad thing by anyone.
So, the replies he got on that one, boy oh boy. Let's see. Xbox fanboy, and I'm just gonna say it down the line. He goes, the perfect fit for a clown. The bias against Sony. Oh no, he's talking about.
No idea what he's talking about, really? So someone in a very high position of power shows that they're not being impartial, and you can't understand why people would now have concerns about how this is going to play out? Like, you can't see that one?
Well, we got Kiss Move here. Oh, shout out to Kiss Move. He says, what about my Xbox? There's a shit ton of games not on my Xbox, but available on your PlayStation. Whataboutism?
No, that's not a whataboutism, actually. This dude's just pointing out that Sony has a ton of console-exclusive games of their own, and they pay for a ton of exclusive content in third-party games, but now everyone's losing their mind at the possibility of Microsoft having console-exclusive games and content, which is something they already had. I don't even like exclusives. I've said a million times on this channel that I don't think exclusives should even exist, but that's not what this whole thing is about. It's not about exclusivity or whether or not it's good or bad. It's about Sony doing something completely hypocritical in order to snuff out competition. This whole thing started as one giant case of it's okay when we do it from Sony, but now they're starting to get legitimate backing for that, and it's really stupid. Literally no one in this situation is your friend. Microsoft sucks for taking options away from PlayStation players. Sony sucks for trying to set completely hypocritical legal precedent, and people like Ricardo Cardoso suck because they blatantly do not understand the market that they're weighing in on and are so easily swayed by personal opinion, which does not bode well for the people who are actually important regarding what comes from all this.
General MLD, don't see any conflict of interest here at all. Good thing Xbox wants to treat COD like Minecraft. You won't have to work hard. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, the guy said don't see any conflict of interest. Like, he's memeing. He's clearly memeing you. Like, why'd you make this video?
Well, anyway, there is a whole bunch of Xbox fanboys going through the list, calling them out as biased.
Why did you just break the stratosphere with that B?
Going through the list, calling them out as biased.
But how is that not biased? The dude literally said my PlayStation in the post. Also, it doesn't make you a fanboy to point out how this may throw legitimacy of future decisions into question. Like, if you don't understand anything about how the open market or how the gaming markets work, you probably shouldn't be in a position of power regarding either of them.
He's not for the gamers, in that he's only interested in PlayStation Corporation, in, you know what I'm saying, Sony fanboy, pony, just cucking for a company, okay?
I mean, that's not the wording I would use, but do you really think it's unreasonable to consider that some people may have interpreted it that way?
When in reality, it's the actual opposite. The fact that he put including my PlayStation in his quote, right, means he understands as a gamer.
Okay, so what about Final Fantasy XIV? That's a third-party game that isn't available on Xbox. Or what about Stray? You know, one of the best reviewed games of the year. That game never came out on Xbox, and Sony had nothing to do with its creation. I mean, clearly you have an issue with non-first-party games being unavailable on systems not associated with the company that made them or funded them. But then again, earlier in this video, someone else pointed out that Sony has exclusive games and content of their own, and you called it a whataboutism. So maybe I'm just giving you too much credit.
So now here's the bullshit we'll have to call out on you, Xbox. You guys are saying that you're only interested in this as a gamer. Okay. And not as a corporation. It's gamer interest. Okay, so let's define these lines.
Keep in mind that the same guy who said anyone who criticized this tweet is an X-bot is the same guy who is now demanding he gets to be the only one that defines the lines. I'm sure those lines will be very impartial.
Let's define these parallels. First, you got gamer interest, and you got corporate interest, right?
Yes, but as is the case with so many people in this argument, you don't seem to realize that Microsoft's acquisition of Activision being blocked would only mean that there is now an insanely hypocritical standard being set in the gaming industry, all because Sony couldn't be fucked to compete with Microsoft head on. Which is weird because they've successfully done that before, multiple times. Sony focuses on exclusive content, Microsoft buys up Activision as a way to get some leverage, and then Sony loses their mind about exclusive content. It's completely hypocritical. And if Sony actually ends up on top at the end of all this, there's going to be some people with a lot of explaining to do. Because again, this quite literally is a case of it's okay when we do it that has, against all logic, somehow started gaining actual traction.
So who are the gamers? Well, you got gamers, and the topic obviously is going to be about Call of Duty, but you got gamers who they choose where to play on the platform. So you got gamers on PC, you got gamers on Xbox, you got gamers on PlayStation. That is just gamers and the choice they made to play on a platform. Then you got corporate interests, right? Now, as far as PC, obviously it's an open platform, so you have so many corporations involved: Nvidia, AMD, Valve, Epic Game Store, all that stuff. So as a platform, PC is a mixture.
Yeah, PC is kind of the wild card of the industry. There's no real reason not to release games over here because it doesn't compete with either the Xbox or PlayStation directly. And it also ensures that your game remains playable and preserved forever instead of just for however long the current console is supported.
But as far as the two remaining consoles, because again, the topic is Call of Duty, obviously Nintendo's around, but they don't have Call of Duty, right?
They used to, though. And you have to wonder what COD would look like nowadays if Nintendo hadn't been bullied away from the franchise by Microsoft and Sony. I mean, you can talk all the shit you want, but Call of Duty was moving copies on the Wii. It wasn't until the Wii U that things kind of slowed down for COD on Nintendo platforms, but even then, you could pretty easily attribute that to the failure of the Wii U as a platform. I bet if Call of Duty were to launch on the Switch, it would be very successful. COD Mobile has been insanely successful, so I can only imagine how much money Activision would make with a full-fledged COD game for the Switch. The point is, COD has been removed from platforms before, but it wasn't the platform's fault, nor do I think it was a good idea. And I seriously doubt it's going to happen again.
So in this case, it's Microsoft and Sony, right? Microsoft with Xbox, Sony with PlayStation. So that's the corporate side. If the topic and you guys who are advertising is all about the gamers, then you have to look at how the acquisition being approved or disapproved can have great impact on the gamers. That means the gamers on PC, the gamers on Xbox, and the gamers on PlayStation.
Yes, when the acquisition of Activision goes through, it will negatively affect PlayStation gamers. No one is denying that, and I hope no one is supporting that. But what people are upset about is the fact that the people trying to stop the acquisition are not doing so with any legal ground or moral ground, because Sony is guilty of the exact same thing. It's just a hypocritical display of what the industry has turned into.
What is the greatest impact any of these moves can have in a negative sense? Well, the greatest negative impact is not being able to play the games.
So do you agree that exclusives are bad? Or is it just the ones that are kept from PlayStation? Like, why is Sony allowed to have exclusives but Microsoft isn't?
On the platform the gamer chose to play on. So if a gamer's been playing this game for a long time, generation after generation on this platform, and now all of a sudden they can't play it no more, that is a great impact to the gamer.
So kind of like how Spider-Man fans felt when Sony bought the license. I mean, Spider-Man was a multi-platform character up until 2018.
Now again, you guys are advertising that you're looking out gamer interest. All right, let's find out. If the acquisition is approved, how does this negatively impact, and we're going to break down each gamers that chose to play on their platform. We'll start with PC. How does this greatly negatively impact PC gamers? And the answer, it doesn't. All right. How does this greatly negatively impact Xbox gamers? It doesn't. Because it's Microsoft who's buying it, and Microsoft is the platform owner, holder of Xbox. How can this negatively impact PlayStation gamers? PlayStation gamers could lose out on playing Call of Duty, thus no longer being able to play the game on the platform they chose as gamers to play. Now they have to look at another ecosystem to play the game on.
But you're missing the point entirely. Removing games from one platform is not being for the gamer. You're absolutely right about that part. But that's not the argument these people are making. They're pointing out that it's fucking stupid how Sony, a company that prides itself on its exclusive IP, is leading the charge against Microsoft for trying to play the exclusive game. That is the controversy. It's not about exclusives, it's about consistency.
To which I said in the beginning, I'm fine, that's normal, whatever. But if you advertising it for the gamers, because I'm not advertising I'm for the whole gamers, as far as I could say, it's just, hey, buy the game where you want. I mean, buy the game where you need to, go to the platform where you need to play the game, and that's always been that way.
Also, not to be that guy, but it really should not be up to a third party to decide what private corporations do that may or may not be good for the consumer. Like, that's what the free market is for. If private companies do something that negatively affects the consumer, they're going to take a financial hit from it, and then either adjust their strategy or be outdone by the competition. It is not the place of any agency or company or third party of any kind to decide ahead of time whether or not the action should be allowed to go through because it may or may not be in the consumer's interest. Like, why can you not just have faith in the consumer to speak for themselves? Oh, but if the consumer speaks for themselves, then you'd have to own up to the fact that your favorite corporation benefits from this because they're a bunch of hypocrites. So we can't have that, can we?
But you guys are the ones, you Xbox influencers are the ones with the gamers. So you have a whole community of gamers to which the majority of Call of Duty gamers is on PlayStation. So they choose to play there. They will be greatly negatively impacted by this acquisition.
Which is the exact thing Sony has already done a million times now.
That's just the reality. It is what it is, okay? Now let's look at what happens if the deal doesn't go through. If this gets disapproved, how does this greatly impact PC gamers? And the answer is, it doesn't. PC gamers still get the game because Activision supports PC. How does this greatly impact Xbox gamers? The answer, it doesn't, because Activision supports Xbox.
It's really entertaining to watch you try to portray yourself as unbiased when it's painfully obvious how biased you actually are. Like, if it were Sony buying up a big publisher, you wouldn't have a word to say about it. You said it yourself earlier in the video that you're a PlayStation fan, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to realize that Microsoft is playing the same game that Sony is. It can't only be a problem when Microsoft does it.
And how does this greatly negatively impact PlayStation? Answer is it doesn't. Activision supports PlayStation.
Which is why it's not going to leave the platform.
So if the acquisition fails, nothing happens.
Oh, and by the way, Microsoft themselves have said they have no plans to remove COD from PlayStation. Now, far be it from them to just lie to us about things like this, but I really don't know why everyone is so concerned about a thing that has no logical reason to happen, and is also being reassured by the people in charge of whether or not it would happen in the first place. Like, I just don't understand where all this outrage regarding COD and Xbox is coming from.
It's status quo. Everybody plays Call of Duty. Every gamer plays Call of Duty.
Yeah, about that.
Right? And it's not like Sony is blocking Activision from making a version on Nintendo. Activision has the power to do that. They just don't want to.
Which, again, I think is a mistake, but maybe they'll change that in the future.
Nintendo could be all up in the thing. Maybe if Nintendo makes a more powerful Switch, the Switch 2 or the Switch Pro, I think it's a Switch 2, whatever. Ignore that statement. Whatever they does, maybe Activision could say, hey, since you create a more powerful hardware, now we could actually align all of them and put wars on all that stuff, right?
I mean, yeah, it could happen. I'm not going to rule it out.
That's all on Activision. So nothing happens. So the reality is, from the gamer's perspective, if the Activision Blizzard deal goes through, there's going to be a large group of gamers that will be potentially could be negatively impacted by the decision.
So because a group of people could potentially be negatively affected by something, it should be stopped entirely, but the company I support should be able to do the exact same thing. Got it.
If the deal doesn't go through, no one's impacted.
By this logic, we should never change anything, ever. If you see nobody being negatively impacted as a deciding factor of something, that means almost every decision ever needs to be stopped.
Now, of course, I already see the crying in the comments section. I already see what you guys are typing.
I mean, yeah, I guess you predicted the ratio, but that should have been a red flag to yourself.
But Game Pass, the key term is greatly negative impact.
Ah, yes, let's add a bunch of subjectivity to this conversation. That's going to help things.
The fact that the game is not day in day on Game Pass is not a huge impact. It just means you just have to buy the game, which is status quo. In fact, majority of the games released in the gaming industry are games you have to buy.
So, nothing changes.
They are not available on a subscription service. Okay? You still get access to Call of Duty, and you still get to play it on the platform that you want. And if you don't want to pay $70 because it's too expensive, you could just wait, and you'll be able to play it at a cheaper price. You could probably even get a used copy.
Are you describing Call of Duty now or in the future? Because they're both the same, which is kind of the point I've been making.
So the fact that it's not on Game Pass day one is not a great impact. Right now, Game Pass only has 25 million subscribers anyway.
Ah, yes, only 25 million subscribers.
And that's across PC, which has 150, 200 million, gamers.
More like 1.75 billion, but go on.
Xbox has 50 million gamers. And you only got 25 million subscribers. That's not a lot.
I mean, it's more than EA Play, but it's kind of hard to tell what actually constitutes a successful game subscription service like this, because they're kind of new. It's not like the old days where every console was expected to have Xbox Live or PlayStation Plus. Services like Game Pass or EA Play are still finding their place in the ecosystem. Not denying that Microsoft probably wants more subscribers than they currently have, but I don't think that's against the norm.
That's not a lot at all, right? So it's not, especially compared to PlayStation gamers.
Okay, good point. How many subscribers does Sony have for their PlayStation Plus service? Or at least how many people are subscribing to the high-tiered one that's supposed to compete with Game Pass? Because if it's lower than Sony would like, I bet they're going to try and make it more appealing to people. Probably by adding games to it. Perhaps even giving you access to games that aren't available on competing platforms. Wouldn't you agree that's how they might go about this? The tone in my voice is supposed to sound sarcastic for a reason, because you should be smelling some parallels here.
So if you're really talking about looking out for the gamers, people who play on PlayStation are gamers. This will impact them.
So people on PlayStation are gamers and need to be protected from exclusive content, but people on PC and Xbox, fuck them. Got it.
Now, Again, if you are saying, well, too bad, PlayStation gamers, you're just going to have to play the game on the platform that is available, get an Xbox, get a PC. To which I have no problem with that statement because, again, I already said it. I said that statement plenty of times across the board for almost every platform.
You see, guys, despite saying a bunch of really biased things, I am actually unbiased. Because I said so.
But that is not for the gamer stance. That is just suck it up, buttercup, deal with it. And that stance benefits more of the corporation.
Okay, so denounce all of Sony's exclusive games.
I get it. The problem is you guys are false misrepresenting yourselves. So I used to stop this nonsense. The reality is you guys are not for the gamer population. You are for the Xbox gamers. You are for the interests of Microsoft and the interests for yourself as an Xbox gamer.
Actually, no. I'm a PC gamer who's completely unaffected by this, and yet is still taking issue with it, because despite my love of the open market, I hate when games are taken away from certain platforms or locked away from certain platforms. Which is why this situation is so frustrating, because like I said before, everyone is in the wrong here. Microsoft are assholes for removing games from PlayStation. Sony are assholes for being complete hypocrites and trying to use this as an opportunity to completely shut down competition instead of, prove why they're the top console. And the people who use this whole situation as a W for one side or the other are also assholes because you're just surrendering your rights as a consumer so your favorite plastic box will have an artificial advantage over the other instead of actually having to improve itself for your benefit.
That's it. Stop pretending you actually care about Nintendo or, cloud gaming on phones. And stop that. Stop embarrassing yourself. Stop lying. Just tell people you want your platform to just get more stuff because that's what you want and that's what you play on. That's it.
Oh, that's it, guys. That's it. That's the only reason you could have issues with this tweet. It is completely impossible for you to just be legitimately concerned with the preservation of the open market because of this tweet. Couldn't possibly be that people generally don't like it when big groups of experts tell you what you are and are not allowed to do with your own money, and then say they're making these decisions for your benefit regardless of whether or not they actually benefit you. No, there's no reason people would take issue with this. They're Xbots. They're all Xbots. It's the only explanation.
That's the tweet. All right? Anyway, let me know what you think about this video. Hit me up in the comment section.
Yeah, okay, we're done. This whole situation has been very strange and really obnoxious to be a viewer of. The deal is going to go through, but I really don't know how anyone can think it's going to result in COD leaving the PlayStation. Microsoft are sinking deeper and deeper into the shit of their own previous decisions. So unless they start really loving the smell of shit, they're going to leave COD on PlayStation. It's free money. Why would they not do that? And for the record, if you're going to give Microsoft shit for buying Activision, you better also be prepared to give Sony shit for buying the game rights to Spider-Man. Paying to lock game modes out of third-party games, like Call of Duty ironically, paying to lock characters out of third-party games, paying to lock expansion packs out of third-party games, and spending millions of dollars on games that will never be on Xbox. Because if the roles were reversed, you would be furious. And that is why this tweet caused such a fucking fuss. It had nothing to do with Xbots, had nothing to do with fanboys, it had to do with biased people in positions of power putting the security of the open market into question. Toodles.